Kid on the roof. When I was about 7, we sublet a house from the original renter who lived in the garage. His lock was an outside padlock. After I heard him yelling at my mom, I locked him in the garage, his apartment. To really make the point, I climbed out on the roof and repeatedly stomped, yelling, "You can't get out." My mom came running out, but let me go on for quite some time. She finally had me come down and got his padlock cut so we could leave. She told me she had the hardest time not laughing, but had to give me some kind of punishment. My poor mom. This was the start of many crazy stunts I pulled as a girl and a teen. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Storytime with Uncle Jon. Today we're taking a look at r/pettyrevenge. So without knowing full context of the story, maybe the guy yelled, maybe he didn't, maybe she yelled, maybe she didn't, maybe they yelled at each other. Who knows? Who knows who started it? But if the guy really was being a D-bag, then, I guess there was worse things that could have happened to the guy. So being locked in your apartment for a little while, not so bad. Although that is a good way to lose your place to rent, so there's that. Slumlord neighbor's time to pay what he owes. The house directly next door to me is a rental property, which I had some issues with earlier this year. The issues came from 2 massive spruce trees that were growing on the property line and were causing property damage to my property. In my area, it's law that in the case of trees growing on the property line, the cost of removal must be split evenly between neighbors, and because the trees and roots were causing property damage, there was a significant case to be made for their removal. Removing the trees was not cheap, and involved bringing in cranes and multiple days of work due to their size and proximity to structures. I approached the neighboring property owner about splitting the removal costs and was basically told, "I have no money." His portion would have been around $4,000. At that point, we decided it would be more expensive to hire an arbor attorney and drag this through the courts, and then try to collect that money than it is to just pay for the entire job ourselves. Now here's where the revenge comes in. The tenant that lives there passed away, and the landlord decided to sell the house. During the inspection process, they discovered some trees on their property that were hazardous and needed to be removed before the sale could go through. It was uninsurable unless the hazard was mitigated. In order to get to these trees, equipment would have had to go through my property. The lots are small, and the way this lot is situated, he would either have to demolish his other neighbor's garage or use my property. The owner approached me asking for permission, and my response was that I would only grant permission to use my property for $4,000, the exact cost of what he owed me. He tried claiming that it would jeopardize the sale of his property, and I simply replied, "I don't care. This is the cost to use my property. Take it or leave it." The following week, he came back with a check for $4,000, and I granted written permission to use my property. I'll never understand why neighbors want to be difficult with each other, and we go through that here. We have a residential house. There's no HOA. It's just a regular old school neighborhood. And, things can be kind of tight, especially for us because we've got, several generations living under one roof. And we have multiple vehicles. We have a camper. We have a landscape trailer that we use for hauling, materials here to do stuff and stuff to the dump and things like that. I tend to park my landscape trailer on the street right behind my truck. And it's in front of the house, but that means other cars are kind of scattered around the neighborhood a little bit. We try to stay clear of driveways and things like that and try not to make life difficult for other neighbors. We know where they like to put their trash cans, so we try not to park there, especially on trash night. But we have these 2 neighbors who all of a sudden wanted to team up together, and I'm pretty sure they couldn't stand each other as of 2 years ago, but all of a sudden we're best buds. But so they teamed up the other day and called the police on me for having my trailer in the street, which the tag was off of it and inside my truck because if you know what a landscape trailer looks like, there's an expanded metal tailgate that you could drop down as a ramp for, putting a lawnmower up there or whatever. Anyway, and that's pretty much where the tag used to be mounted. Well, that tailgate, the hinges rusted off a couple years ago, and I just kept the tag loose and in my truck because there's really no good place to put it on the trailer without it getting damaged or being knocked off the trailer. So it is registered, but they called on me for having it parked in the street. In order to park a trailer in the street, it has to stay connected to your vehicle. Go figure. I'm not saying, rules are rules. I get it. I broke the rules. Cop told me I got to fix it. So I did. Put the tag on it, figured out a way to attach it, got it off the street, crammed it up against my camper, and we'll go from there. The neighbor across the street, who also got called on, had her camper out along the curb in front of her house. It's not even like she was parking in front of a neighbor's house. She wasn't going to leave it there forever, but she was going to try to go camping sometime. And, she went camping a couple weeks ago, and she was planning on going camping a couple weeks after that. And, rather than try to, pigeonhole that camper back in the tiny spot she has for it, she figured she'd leave it there for a couple weeks. Well, so now she had to move her camper. And I understand people don't want their neighborhood looking trashy. I get it. But at the same time, if you want an HOA, why don't you go live where there's an HOA? I don't know. Again, I was wrong. I fixed it. Whatever. But there's a lot of other things that they could have been worried about besides just that. You know, there's a lot of rental properties around here whose grass has not been cut in over a month, and it looks like it hasn't been cut in 3 months. There are people who have trash out at their curbs, just sitting there loose on the curb. There are people who have building materials sitting out at their curb. The trash man will not take that. There is no bulk trash unless you call and pay a fee. So, you know, talking about our 2 trailers was just kind of petty. But anyway. But as far as those trees go, you know, if they're on the property line, I mean, I can't blame OP here. I would have paid the whole thing just to get it done. And you need to access my property. You really want to sell that house? You're going to pay. Otherwise, tough shit. Your problem, not mine. That's the way life goes. If he'd have been reasonable up front, you know, and paid for half of the tree removal on the property line, then, you know, later on you can work out a deal where you can have access and, you know, everybody gets along. But some neighbors just don't want to do that kind of stuff, so. Mess with my dogs, good luck finding your sandals. So a few years ago, my wife, 39 female, and me, 40 male, lived on the island of St. Martin while my wife was attending medical school. While there, we ended up adopting 2 wonderful coconut retrievers to call our own. I'd never heard that phrase before. We would walk our pups to the beach almost daily so that we could let them out and run and play. This all transpired during the COVID outbreak, so the beach was almost completely left to us and our dogs every time we went. As mindful pet owners, we tried to stay as far away from people as possible, knowing that our dogs were young and super friendly and excitable. So we usually set up our area as far away from anyone else as possible. This day starts off like any other. We set our stuff at the area farthest away from other people, let our dogs off their leash and let them run and play. Then this elderly French couple came over and set their stuff right next to us when there's literally a mile of beach they could have chose. Like I said earlier, the pups were a little extra friendly, so they went over to this couple and were trying to get pets. The couple started yelling and kicking at the dogs, which upset me greatly. Yeah, I don't blame you there. I got the dogs leashed back up and away from the people who stormed off glaring and muttering something in French. Now there are 3 things in my life I love: my wife, my 3 children, and all the dogs. Their attitude and actions towards my little puppers sent me over the edge. Now, being of bigger stature of the average man, I could have easily bopped the old guy on the head, but I'm a pacifist by nature. But I just knew I had to teach these elder frogs a lesson. Oh dear. Frogs is a derogatory term for French people. Anyway, after the altercation between us, they decided to take a walk along the beach, which I said before was about a mile long. So they were gone and I saw my opportunity to strike. I ended up burying their sandals a good foot into the sand. Mess with my dogs? Not today, Satan. That is pretty petty. Although, I don't know. I would consider that pretty even. Actually, I might have even gone a little further. You start kicking at my kids or my dogs, my family, my wife. Yeah, I probably would have ended up bopping the old guy on the head. Because let me tell you something. I understand. The dogs are excitable. People that don't own dogs or whatever, well, even if they are dog owners, they don't want people's pets jumping on them. The solution for that here is 90% of places you go, your dog has to be on a leash out in public. Whether it's the beach, in the forest, on the trail, your dog has to be leashed. And there's a good reason for that. There's several good reasons. You don't want them running off and getting lost. You don't want them running off and getting into a fight with a wild animal or another dog. You don't want to scare the hell out of old people and children when they go running up because they don't know if they're kind and excitable. They think they're being attacked. And that's where, kicking. So I sort of get both sides of this. But at the same time, usually by the time the dog gets within a couple feet of you, you can tell that it's not vicious. But I don't know. I'm torn on this one. What do you guys think? Like, do you think that was an appropriate reaction from the older couple, or did they go too far? Like, I mean, I know, don't go off straight emotion. We all love our pets. I get that. And nobody wants to see that happen. But at the same time, I'm thinking back to neighbors that I've had where their dogs were always loose because they either refused to leash them and thought they were so well trained that they'd stay on their property, which that never happened. And I had one dog who was very friendly and I didn't mind him. I could deal with him. Then there was another dog with another neighbor who would come charging at you, try to be all vicious, hair standing up on its spine and on its neck, and wouldn't do anything while you were facing him. As soon as you turned your back, though, he'd grab a hold of your, the back of your calf or your ankle or something. And he bit many people that way. in this day and age, you just can't, well, any day and age, you just can't tell. So I don't know. Maybe I would have been the old guy. I don't know. Try to cheat me on my trip? Enjoy circling the city for free. This happened just now when I called a Bolt driver to pick up my family for a ride to the local lake. As some background info, the app became very successful where I live because the cars are cleaner and the drivers usually friendlier than those of the taxi cab companies. Some taxi drivers caught on and switched companies believing they could continue their shady ways there, taking detours to increase the cost, having personal stuff in the cargo bay, smoking while driving, you get the gist. So here's the story. My family wanted to go swimming in the lake, which is located on the other side of our city. My sister wanted to take the bus, but I suggested a Bolt because the bus station has no shade and there are some constructions being done to the road leading to us. My husband and son obviously agree because neither liked the bus and the car would be faster. So I order a driver. The app says it'll take him about 6 minutes because he needs to finish another ride. Nothing uncommon, no worries. My son is excited, hubby and sis are optimistic, so we chat away. After about 2 minutes, my son asks to watch the progress, which he often does, and suddenly wonders why the driver is farther away. I take a look, and indeed the driver went the opposite direction, passing a store. We surmise that there might have been a construction site too, or that he wanted to bypass ours and continue chatting. After another 2 minutes, I check my phone and notice him circling a kindergarten. Maybe he wanted to take a shortcut and noticed he couldn't get through? We continue our conversation. After some more minutes, I see the driver getting to a crossing which might lead our way. Finally! The city must be full of construction sites today. I relax a little bit, but to my surprise, he continues ahead towards the train station and not us. At this point, I realize that he doesn't intend to pick us up. He intends for me to get bored and cancel the ride, in which case he gets a fee anyway. I start fuming. I write him a message stating that I noticed him having difficulties getting to my location and that I didn't mind him canceling so that someone else might come. The driver doesn't reply but gets on the next main street. Possible directions: one way toward us, the train station a little further away, a big hardware store very far away. He chooses the hardware store. I try to call him, but he doesn't answer. At this point, I've had enough. The driver already wasted about 11 minutes of our time. The bus was long gone by now, too. My husband calls another car on his phone while I write a complaint to the app, including a screenshot of the driver and his car, and decide to wait. This driver's not going to drive me anywhere, but I'll be damned if I cancel now. I'll let him get to the corner of my street and then cancel. After all, two can play this game. My husband's car gets to us in less than 5 minutes, and all this time my driver continues to take the scenic route. After a total of 16 minutes, he's got enough and cancels himself. I'm very happy to have ruined 16 minutes of this man's life after he tried to cheat me for my money. Thank God I wasn't in a rush otherwise. I might have been forced to pay the cancellation fee. I can't stand a cheat. Taxi cab drivers. I've been to some cities where cab drivers will intentionally take longer routes to boost their fare. Don't know about Bolt, Lyft, Uber, any of that stuff, but I do know taxis can be that way sometimes. Or they'll try to let you out somewhere where you're not supposed to be, and usually it's within a half a mile where your destination is. But I mean, in this day and age where everybody's got, a cell phone with an app for maps and everything else and GPS tracking, I'm not sure how they think that trying that is a good idea. And then, if you realize, even if you do realize you're in the wrong area and you call them out on it, they'll want to charge you even more to get you to your actual destination. I just don't have time for cheats, man. If you can't make an honest living doing what you're doing, then maybe it's time to do something else. Supervisor sorrows. Good morning, fellow Redditors. This story happened when I was 26 years at the time. My current age is not important. Okay. I get a job at a belt buckle and medallion factory. My supervisor hated my younger sister and was always short and kind of rude to me. I had been there about a year and never took off. One day I started vomiting, so I called in sick. I just got out of the shower. I smelled like vomit. A knock at the door produced a coworker. She told me my supervisor told her to come to my house to tell me to get into work. I told her that I had been vomiting all morning and that I was not coming in to infect everyone else. About 30 minutes later, my supervisor called and fired me. This is where my pettyrevenge comes into play. The coworker that came to my house called me to ask how to repair a buckle that had trout on it. Trout? Fish? Anyway, she also wanted to know how to repair the fur on the grizzly medallion. Neither were in stock. I told her to ask her supervisor how. About 10 minutes later, my ex-supervisor called me. He said they really needed me to come back for just 2 weeks. Those 2 special orders needed to go out in 3 days. I needed to train someone how to do what I had taught myself. He told me my pay would be the same, minimum wage, and this was 1980. I giggled to myself and said yes, I would be more than happy to come back for 2 weeks only. He was ecstatic. Hold on, He then said they would see me tomorrow. I told him, wait, we're not finished. I'll come back as a consultant for $250 a day for 2 weeks to train. However, I also need a contract stating my job and total pay. He hung up on me. Later he called back saying the owner was agreeable. I said, sorry, that was a one-time offer and I don't feel inclined to work with him again. Have a great day. They probably lost those accounts. Shouldn't have fired me for being sick. The good news is labor laws here in the U.S., for the most part, not for everybody, but for the most part, are to the point where you can call out sick. I mean, if you're sick, you're sick. There ain't nothing you can do about it. Now, if they fire you because you're sick, you might have legal standing where you can take recourse against them for firing you for actually being ill. Now, if they just call you and tell you they're letting you go and don't give you a reason, it depends on, again, where you live. In my state, they can call me at any time and tell me that I'm fired. They don't want me back, whatever, blah, blah, blah. For no reason, it doesn't matter. As long as they are careful with how they phrase the firing and don't give me some weird BS reason, then, no big deal. It's very difficult in this state to get a wrongful termination case won from the employee side. So, yeah, I mean, good for you. Stand up for yourself. As long as you can get other work, then you've got the upper hand. So go for it. Petty revenge by doing your job to the letter. I work in the technical department of a fairly large company. We deal in repackaging stuff, imported goods mainly. So what frequently happens is that other companies hire us to process their, in less than optimal condition, products. The other week we had to do a small run and the office decided to use an old machine to run it through. This machine, however, had been stationary for about 8 or 9 months. For those who don't know, stationary machines tend to deteriorate despite maintenance. There is no substitute for actual production. So what happened is one air hose after the other started breaking. Because we're chronically understaffed, the week technicians patch everything up to get it running as fast as possible, and the weekend technicians fix it properly. This has to do with the contract the sales department had made concerning who pays what type of technical interventions, be it our office or the client. The office, on the other hand, didn't understand why the machine wasn't being more efficient and told us off for not doing a proper job of maintaining it. A machine that has been at a standstill for over 8 months doesn't just work perfectly on day one. Shocking, I know. So in an unseen act of camaraderie, we no longer just patch things, we take the full time to replace everything, meaning efficiency took a nosedive. The cost shot up like a rocket and the small profit that was forecasted has turned into a 4-digit loss so far. I'm all about, when I work for a company, if I find a way to streamline things and make them easier on the company or the boss or my coworkers or whatever, I will do everything in my power to do that, to make things more profitable for them and hopefully more profitable for me in the future. Plus, it makes me feel better. I get a sense of satisfaction from it. I know there's other things I can do in this world that give me satisfaction, but that's just what I do. And there's a lot of us out there. But start screwing around and blaming me for things that the company didn't do, that's where I draw the line too. You've got standard operating procedures and things that should be done a certain way. We're no longer going to overlook those. Whether HR or the CEO or anybody else, supervisors or whoever tells us, we're not going to ignore those. We're going to go ahead and do everything to the letter, just the way that our contracts or the handbooks or whatever say that we're supposed to do them. And then you can clean up the mess. Good luck. Accidentally ruined bully's favorite pants. Just remembered this the other day and needed to post it somewhere. This wasn't really an intentional revenge, but petty nonetheless, and the result was pretty satisfying, so I feel it might suit this subreddit. I was in, I think, 4th grade when this new girl joined my class. I was already bullied by one of the boys and another girl, and this girl decided I was a good target for her as well. She'd berate and tease me pretty much every day until one day where a thought randomly hit me as she was in the middle of making fun of me in front of her friend group like she'd done so many times before. She was wearing these shiny dark red pants. She'd wore them so often they must have been her favorites. I don't know how I hadn't thought of it before, but in that moment I realized I recognized the pants because I'd had a pair just like them. So without thinking, I asked her, "Did you buy those at the second-hand shop in the village? Because I donated a pair of pants just like those a while ago." I guess she did get them from that shop because her face instantly dropped and she got really mad, and after that day I never saw her wear those pants again. And she didn't bully me again for several months until she moved to a different school. So I accidentally ruined what seemed to be her favorite pants and got her to stop bullying me all on the same day. Pretty productive day if you ask me. Disclaimer, I wasn't trying to make fun of her for buying clothes from a second-hand shop. I was genuinely curious to know if she had my old pants. I don't think I actually meant any harm when I said it, but I won't lie, after I realized it upset her, I was pretty happy about it. Lol. I bought clothes myself too from secondhand shops, and those pants were actually a hand-me-down from my cousin that Dad had me purge when I was getting a new batch of clothes from the cousins. Yep, nothing wrong with buying stuff from a secondhand store. I've done it myself. Now, I will say, for my height, girth, whatever, my bulky stature, it tends to be more difficult for me to find certain things at secondhand shops because guys my size tend to wear through things. Also, guys from my generation, I guess, tend to wear like things like jeans. I wear jeans until I either blow the crotch out, rip a knee, the stitching on a pocket comes loose, whatever. I will wear those things until they are just destroyed. And then a lot of other guys my size and my age do the same thing. So it's hard for me to find things that I like there and that are comfortable for me. Every once in a while I'll get lucky. I don't wear a lot of suit jackets, but once in a while. And, sometimes wearing the same one. Oh, there's a kitty cat. Sometimes wearing the same one over and over for different funerals and weddings gets a little old. So, most of the time I'll just switch up shirts, but the rest of the time, it'd be nice to have like at least a fresh jacket change, once every year or two at least. But definitely nothing wrong with that. And it definitely doesn't sound like OP was digging at her for getting them in a secondhand shop. It sounded like it was just a revelation that, wow, they look like my old pants. So yeah, good for you. And you know what? At this point, who gives a shit? Use whatever you got to get her to stop bullying you and go away, And it worked. Uncle's divorce from cheating wife. My uncle back in the 90s had 2 restored cars, a 1969 Firebird, his first and most cherished car, and a 1969 Chevelle, blue with white racing stripes. Both cars were show ready. His wife was caught cheating, so here comes the divorce. When he got his agreement to sign, she demanded that she wanted the Camaro. Well, they didn't own a Camaro. Yet. He drove that hot rod Chevelle to a local grocery store parking lot and waited. Finally, some young high school kid pulled up, and my uncle made his year. He traded that kid even up for his beat-up Camaro, went home and signed the divorce papers. After the judge signed off and the divorce was finalized, they met in the parking lot, and she was given her Camaro. She was trying to F him out of his prized and cherished car, but thankfully due to her thinking it was a Camaro, he easily kept it. He still has the Firebird. I'd say this qualifies because he just threw away a shit ton of cash he invested in that Chevelle, especially in today's market, just to match her pettiness. He expected her to want the Chevelle. Lesson learned, I guess, if you're going to get divorced and ask for a specific car or a specific piece of furniture or anything else, maybe you should learn what they're actually called, what model they are, what brand. Just saying, Speaking of brands, have you ever heard about Uncle Jon's handmade soaps, beard balms, shave soaps, things like that? Well, if you haven't, you have now. If you want to know more and you like that kind of handmade, local type stuff, even though we're not local to each other most likely, small business, let's put it that way. Then do me a favor, go ahead and visit this website right here. There's a link down in the description box below. And this week, I think we haven't done a coupon in a long time. I think for you guys on YouTube, if you do Storytime with Uncle Jon, make sure you spell John right, Jon. Storytime with Uncle Jon, that'll be your coupon code. And we're going to do, let's say, 15% off. That should at least cover shipping for most things in the continental US. If you're UK or anything like that, it probably won't help as much, but it's something. So anyway, if you got any questions, you can always hit me up on the chat feature on the front page of the website, or you can go ahead and email me at unclejohnssoap@gmail.com. I'll put that down below too in the description box, make it a little easier. Check it out. Maybe there's something you like. Maybe there's something your wife will like. Your mom. Somebody. The cats.